Portland, Maine. The shipyard hums with a strange electric anticipation. Gray morning air heavy with salt and the tang of welding smoke. Riveters hammer steel plate after steel plate. The clang echoes across the Kennebec River like artillery in rhythm. Beneath the rising skeleton of hull number 001, the SS Patrick Henry men and women labor against the clock. A whistle blows. Sparks rain from scaffolding. Foreman Bill Hackett wipes his brow and looks at the massive steel form. "They say she's the future," he mutters. The younger fitter beside him snorts. Future of what? Scrap metal. Few believed this ship, ungainly, slow, almost crude, could change the course of a global war. At exactly 11:00 a.m., a siren wails. The crowd cheers. President Franklin D. Roosevelt listens via radio from Washington. The Liberty ship, Patrick Henry, slides into the water. Her 441-foot welded hull shudders and glides into the river, a newborn creature taking its first breath. Men throw caps in the air. Women wipe tears. Roosevelt's voice follows solemn and prophetic. "The ships we are building today will bring liberty to Europe and freedom to the world." But in naval offices of London and Berlin alike, the tone is cynical. The British call it the ugly duckling. Germans mock it as a slow-moving coffin. Even American shipwrights sneer. "All welded, no rivets. She'll fall apart in a stiff breeze." The Patrick Henry is the first of a breed, the Liberty ship built not for beauty or speed, but for quantity. Its design comes from a British model adapted by the U.S. Maritime Commission and championed by Henry J. Kaiser. That evening under floodlights at Richmond, California, Kaiser walks the yard blueprint in hand. "Gentlemen," he says, "we're not building ships. We're building a machine to build ships." He points to an assembly line, a quarter-mile long, cranes prefabricated sections, welding stations like an automobile factory. Kaiser wants one ready in 40 days. The engineers stare. "He's gone mad," one whispers. But America is running out of time. In the Atlantic, German U-boats sink Allied merchant ships faster than they can be replaced. Britain's lifeline food fuel ammunition is vanishing beneath the waves. Without a miracle, the island fortress will starve. That miracle, ugly or not, will soon be welded together by ordinary men and women. As night falls, the Patrick Henry floats in the river, her hull glistening under floodlights. Reporters swarm around Mrs. William A. Egan, who christened the ship earlier that morning. "Do you think she'll sail true, ma'am?" one asks. She smiles softly. "I don't know, but I know she'll be needed." A tugboat sounds its horn. The first Liberty ship drifts into the channel, slow, ungainly, and perfect for her purpose. No one yet realizes it, but this awkward vessel will become the most important ship design in modern history. Not a warship, not a battleship, but a life ship, one that will keep the Allies alive. And soon thousands more will follow. October 1941, Richmond Shipyards, California. The fog burns away under the midday sun, revealing a scene of chaos that looks more like a steel jungle than a shipyard. Cranes swing overhead. Trains unload steel plate and prefabricated frames. Welders crouch along half-finished hulls, sparks spitting from their torches in 1,000 orange stars. At the center of it all, Henry J. Kaiser stands on a catwalk, hands on his hips, white hard hat gleaming. He isn't a shipbuilder by trade. He built roads, bridges, and dams. But now he's taken on the biggest gamble of his life, building ships faster than anyone thought humanly possible. He points to a calendar hanging on the bulkhead. 30 days, he says to his foreman. "That's all it takes to make a Liberty ship if we do it my way." His way is revolutionary. Instead of constructing each ship piece by piece at one slip, Kaiser divides the process into modular sections. Each section is built separately, hull, stern, bow, deckhouse, then welded together like parts of a machine. It's industrialized shipbuilding mass production on a scale no navy has attempted. A skeptical naval officer touring the site shakes his head. "You'll never get a seaworthy vessel out of a factory line," he mutters. Kaiser just grins. "We're not building yachts, Commander. We're building lifeboats for civilization." Inside the fabrication sheds, men and women, many of whom have never seen the ocean, work shoulder to shoulder. The workforce is as new as the process. Housewives, farmers, teachers, even college students pour in from across the country. By the end of 1941, a third of Kaiser's welders are women. They wear overalls and goggles, their hair tied back under scarves. The press soon dubs them Rosie the Riveters, though here they're wielding acetylene torches, not rivet guns. Sparks dance against their gloves as they fuse steel plates thicker than a man's arm. "Never thought I'd build a ship," one young woman says, lifting her mask. "Guess there's a first time for everything." And somehow it works. By December, just weeks before Pearl Harbor, the first Richmond-built Liberty ship slides into the bay. Her name, SS Ocean Vanguard. The entire process took 45 days, less than half the normal time for a cargo ship. Kaiser's men cheer. Reporters flock to the site. "How did you do it?" they ask. Kaiser shrugs. "We eliminated pride," he says. "We replaced it with purpose." Then the world changes overnight. December 7, 1941, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. Within hours, the United States is at war. The scale of the emergency is beyond imagination. The Atlantic convoys are being slaughtered by U-boats. In the Pacific, the Philippines and Singapore are falling. America's merchant fleet, the arteries of her supply system, are dangerously thin. President Roosevelt calls in Kaiser personally. The Oval Office is dim that night, the map of the world spread across his desk. Henry Roosevelt says we're going to need ships, thousands of them. "How fast?" Kaiser asks. Roosevelt looks up. "Faster than they can sink them." Kaiser returns to California like a man possessed. The shipyard expands to cover over 400 acres. Richmond becomes a city within a city, cafeterias, hospitals, dormitories, and childcare centers built overnight to support the workforce. Floodlights turn night into day. The sound of welding and hammering never stops. By early 1942, a new ship slides off the ways every 10 days. By summer, every 5. And then, in a feat that stuns even his own engineers, Kaiser sets a record that will never be broken. The SS Robert E. Peary, built from keel to launch in 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes. It's an act of industrial audacity unmatched in history. Newsreels show the ship sliding into the water, while workers wave banners reading, "The ship that won't wait for Hitler." The world laughs, but it's a nervous laugh. The ugly ducklings are multiplying, and even the German High Command notices. Admiral Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, reports grimly, "We cannot sink them fast enough." Every ship looks the same, a squat bow, a blocky superstructure, a single stack. They're slow, barely 10 knots at full steam, and their engines rattle like tin cans. But each carries 10,000 tons of cargo. Tanks, ammunition, grain trucks fuel even locomotives. One Liberty ship feeds a division for a week. 10 feed an army for a month. 2,000 keep an entire war alive. Yet the shipyard workers barely pause to think about that. They just build, day and night. Welders sleep in cots beside their stations, their boots lined up under the bunks like soldiers' gear. In the cafeterias, a slogan hangs over the serving line, "A ship a day keeps the Axis away." And somewhere far across the Atlantic, the men on the front lines are beginning to feel the difference. March 1942, North Atlantic, 800 miles west of Ireland. Night falls heavy over the gray ocean, a black curtain of sleet and spray. 50 ships move together through the dark, a convoy designated HX-178 bound for Liverpool. Their wakes weave white ribbons across the surface. Somewhere out there, invisible beneath the waves, a wolf pack is waiting. On the bridge of the SS John W. Brown, a Liberty ship fresh from the yards of Baltimore. Captain Merle Davis watches the horizon through salt-streaked binoculars. The wind bites through his coat. His ship creaks like an old door, welded plates flexing with every swell. She's not fast, not graceful, but she carries 700-800 tons of precious cargo ammunition, canned food and truck parts, lifeblood for Britain's survival. Around him, his crew, many barely trained, scan the water nervously. The air smells of oil, salt, and fear. Sound contact bearing 210, the sonar operator calls. Davis stiffens. All hands to battle stations. Klaxons blare. The convoy changes course. Searchlights cut through the dark beams, crisscrossing the waves like swords. Then a flash. The distant silhouette of a merchantman erupts in flame. Another torpedo strikes home. The sea glows orange with burning oil. The radio crackles. This is convoy HX-178, multiple hits. Submarines in the water. Destroyers dart through the gaps, depth charges booming in rolling sequence. The sound is physical. It thumps through the hull and up the bones of every man aboard. Davis grips the wheel. Hold your course. Don't break formation. It's the hardest order he's ever given. Every instinct screams to scatter. But they've learned a lone ship is a dead ship. Together, they survive. Hours pass before the attack subsides. Smoke drifts low over the convoy. Davis exhales, chest tight. How many did we lose? His first officer shakes his head. 4, maybe 5. God help the poor bastards. Then he looks out at the horizon, 50 ships still holding line, still moving east. The sun breaks through the clouds. He smiles grimly. We'll make it, he says. We always do. For every convoy that arrives, 10 more set sail. From Halifax, Norfolk, New York, and Reykjavik, the Liberty ships march across the Atlantic in endless gray lines. Their decks are stacked high with crates marked U.S. Army Ordnance and Lend-Lease. Their holds rumble with trucks, jeeps, and food for nations on the edge of collapse. Each voyage is a gamble. The U-boats call them iron coffins, but the men aboard call them lifelines. One Liberty ship can carry 2,840 jeeps or 440 tanks or 9,000 tons of ammunition, or enough wheat to feed 1 million men for a week. And every one of them is built the same way, simple, sturdy, replaceable. When one goes down, another replaces it within weeks. The math is brutal, but it wins wars. By late 1942, convoys arrive in Britain faster than the U-boats can sink them. The tide begins to shift. Factories in Birmingham and Manchester roar back to life. The British Army regains its strength. Across the Channel, in the occupied ports of France, German intelligence intercepts the reports with disbelief. Admiral Karl Dönitz fumes in his bunker at Lorient. How many can they possibly build, he demands. An aide replies quietly, as many as they need, Herr Admiral. Meanwhile, back in America, the shipyards are operating at a pace no one thought possible. In Richmond, California, 5 Liberty ships launch in a single week. At Bethlehem Fairfield in Baltimore, whistles blow every third day for another send-off. Thousands of workers crowd the docks, welders, pipe fitters, painters, cheering as each new hull slides into the water, flags snapping in the wind. At the ceremonies, the speeches are always the same, short, proud, and practical. These ships, one foreman says, carry our boys tomorrow. And the names, each one carries meaning. John W. Brown. Jeremiah O'Brien. Robert E. Peary. Joseph M. Medill. Booker T. Washington. Every name a story. Every hull a promise. The press calls them Kaiser's miracle ships. Roosevelt calls them weapons of democracy. The sailors just call them liberties. Still, the dangers remain. In winter, the Atlantic itself is an enemy. Ice forms on the rails, waves crash over the decks, and engines freeze solid. Yet the convoys push on across the North Atlantic, around the Cape of Good Hope, through the Persian Gulf, and across the Pacific. Wherever there's an Allied soldier fighting a Liberty ship has already been their unseen, unsung, indispensable. By the end of 1942, over 500 Liberty ships are afloat. And the war, once balanced on the knife edge of starvation, begins to tip, not because of tanks or planes, but because of steel boxes with engines that refuse to quit. January 1943, Liverpool docks, United Kingdom. Snowflakes drift through the smoke rising from the piers, melting against the heat of cranes and boilers. Dockhands swarm over the hull of a newly arrived Liberty ship, SS Jeremiah O'Brien, her decks stacked high with crates stenciled U.S. Army. As the hatches swing open, the cargo emerges like treasure, canned meat, fuel drums, spare engines, trucks, ammunition. To the men unloading her, it's more valuable than gold. Each crate means warmth, movement, survival. "Where's this lot headed?" a young stevedore asks, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "North Africa," the foreman replies. "Monty's pushing Rommel out of Tunisia. He'll need every drop of fuel we've got." A crane groans, lowering a Sherman tank from the hold. "That come from America, too, straight from Detroit," the foreman says. He pats the hull affectionately. It's dented, rusted, streaked with salt, but still afloat. Still doing its job. By 1943, Liberty ships are no longer a novelty. They are the backbone of the Allied supply chain. Hundreds cross the Atlantic every month, braving storms and submarines alike. For every Liberty that goes down, 3 more replace her. The German U-boat captains know their days are numbered. Improved Allied tactics, sonar, radar, air patrols make the wolf packs less deadly. Captain Erich Topp, one of Germany's top aces, writes in his log, "It's like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. For everyone I sink, 2 appear on the horizon." Meanwhile, the men who sail the Liberties live lives of constant danger and quiet heroism. Most are merchant mariners, civilians, not soldiers, armed only with a single deck gun and courage. Down in the engine room of the SS John Ericsson, chief engineer Patrick Red Malone wipes oil from his hands. The triple expansion steam engine, an old design resurrected for wartime use, hammers steadily, pistons glistening with sweat and grease. A junior fireman shouts, "She's running hot again." Malone grins. "She's running, ain't she? That's all she needs to do." The simplicity of the design is the secret. While German ships require precision parts, Liberty ships can be repaired with a wrench and determination. If a bearing seizes, it's hammered loose. If a pipe bursts, it's patched with tin and prayer. As one chief engineer famously said, "If you can fix a tractor, you can fix a Liberty." The supply routes grow longer and more vital. In the Pacific, Liberty ships carry fuel and rations to island airstrips. In the Arctic, they fight their way to Murmansk through seas of ice and enemy fire. The convoys to Russia, PQ-17, PQ-18, JW-51B, become legends of endurance. Crews chip ice from the decks with hammers, fingers bleeding, as Luftwaffe bombers scream overhead. Those ships feed the Eastern Front trucks for the Red Army food, for the starving steel, for the factories. Stalin's generals call them the bread of victory. In North Africa, they keep Montgomery's 8th Army alive. In Sicily, they deliver the first waves of invasion supplies. And in the Pacific, they haul the bulldozers and construction gear that turn jungle islands into air bases. Everywhere they go, they carry not just cargo, but the promise of endurance. Yet despite their triumphs, the nickname Ugly Ducklings sticks. Sailors still joke about their awkward shape and slow engines. One graffiti scrawl found on the bulkhead of the SS Robert Rowan reads, "She ain't fast, she ain't pretty, but she gets us there." In May 1943, the Robert Rowan proves it. Off Gela, Sicily, she's unloading ammunition when a German bomber swoops out of the sun. The bomb hits amidships, detonating her cargo. The explosion sends a column of flame hundreds of feet into the air. Photographers capture it, a ship torn in half, yet her crew still fighting fires on the deck until the very last second. The film goes around the world. Newspapers call it the spirit of the Liberty Fleet. And the public, once skeptical, begins to understand these awkward ships are as vital as any battleship or bomber. That same summer, President Roosevelt tours the yards at Richmond. "How many have you launched this week?" he asks. "5, sir," a young woman replies. "Number 6 is tomorrow." Roosevelt smiles. "We used to measure progress in years. Now we measure it in days." He turns to his aide and murmurs, "These people, these ships, they're going to win the war." He's right. But no one yet knows how much farther they'll have to go or how much heavier the loads these ugly ducklings will have to bear. June 1944, the English Channel. The sea is thick with ships, more vessels than any sailor has ever seen. The horizon itself seems made of steel. From battleships to landing craft, from tugs to trawlers, the entire Allied armada churns toward Normandy. And woven among them, slow and steady, move the Liberty ships. The night before D-Day, the wind carries a low chorus of engines, a mechanical heartbeat echoing across the water. The Liberty ships are the silent giants of the invasion force, carrying tanks, trucks, medical supplies, rations, and ammunition. Aboard the SS Samuel Chase, Captain James McIntyre checks his watch. 0 hour and 5, he says quietly. His crew has spent the night loading landing craft from the Davit's small LCVPs that will carry soldiers and supplies to the beaches. From the deck, he can see the flashes along the coast, German artillery already firing into the dawn. The gray water erupts in geysers of spray. The smell of cordite rides on the wind. Message from control, the radio man shouts. Begin offload operations. McIntyre nods. Aye. God help the boys in those boats. By sunrise, the sea becomes a living conveyor belt. Hundreds of Liberty ships line up offshore, their cranes swinging constantly. The coordination is breathtaking, like an orchestra of steel and sweat. Down on the decks, sailors roll drums of aviation fuel into nets, shouting over the roar of engines. Others lower crated jeeps into the surf. Some unload directly onto floating pontoon causeways built by the Seabees. Every few minutes, explosions shake the horizon, yet the work continues without pause. On board the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, the crew hears the whine of Stuka dive bombers overhead. A gunner opens fire with the 20mm Oerlikon cannon. His tracers arc bright against the morning haze. Keep at it, the boatswain yells. She's got to stay unloaded, dead or alive. One bomb splashes dangerously close, drenching the deck in seawater and smoke. The ship shudders, but holds. Within hours, the O'Brien and her sister ships offload thousands of tons of supplies, fuel stretchers, canned rations. A young seaman, face streaked with oil, watches the burning coastline. Sir, he murmurs, I never thought we'd come this far. McIntyre nods, eyes fixed on the chaos. You haven't seen anything yet, son. The hard part's keeping them fed after this. For weeks after the invasion, Liberty ships form a ceaseless shuttle between England and France. Some anchor offshore as floating warehouses. Others beach themselves intentionally to unload faster. By July, more than 2 million men and 500,000 vehicles have crossed the channel, sustained entirely by Liberty ship convoys. Every bullet fired in Normandy, every ration eaten, every drop of gasoline burned, all of it rode across on the backs of the ugly Ducklings. Behind the scenes, the U.S. Merchant Marine bears the cost. 1 out of every 26 merchant sailors dies at sea. Few wear uniforms. Fewer still are remembered. But without them, there would have been no Normandy, no liberation, no victory. In August, the SS Richard Montgomery, loaded with over 6,000 tons of bombs, runs aground off the Thames estuary. Her hull splits, but her cargo never detonates. Even today, the wreck lies there, a silent reminder of the risk those ships carried. Meanwhile, Henry Kaiser's empire of steel still hums across the Atlantic. The shipyards no longer build one ship every few weeks, they build dozens every day. The total climbs past 2,000. The industrial miracle that once seemed impossible has become routine. At Richmond, the workers pause one afternoon as a telegram arrives from the Navy Department. It reads, "All Liberty Yards outstanding performance. You have built a bridge across the sea." The message is read aloud over the loudspeakers. The welders cheer, then go straight back to work. For them, there's no glory, no headlines, only schedules and quotas. But in their labor, the shape of victory is forged. By autumn, the first supply convoys roll directly into Cherbourg and Le Havre, bringing food and winter coats to Allied troops racing toward Paris. The soldiers begin calling them Santa ships. One GI writes home, "Every time we start to run low on ammo or grub, one of those slow gray tubs shows up and saves our hides. I don't care what they look like, I'd marry one if I could." And somewhere in the channel, as dusk falls, the black silhouettes of Liberty ships stretch in an unbroken line toward the horizon. Proof that wars aren't only won by men with rifles or pilots in cockpits. Sometimes they're won by men with welding torches. Men who built ugly ships that never stopped moving. December 1944, Barents Sea, north of Norway. Darkness reigns almost 20 hours a day. The cold is absolute, a cold that freezes tears before they fall. It turns steel brittle silences engines mid-beat. Yet through this frozen void, the Liberty ships keep coming. Convoy JW62 inches through the Arctic night bound for Murmansk. 30 merchant ships ride in tight formation under the escort of British destroyers and corvettes. Overhead, auroras ripple green and blue across the sky, mocking the black waves below. Aboard the SS Horace Greeley, Captain Sam Everett rubs his gloved hands and breathes frost into the dim bridge. His ship carries tanks, trucks, and fuel supplies destined for the Red Army locked in its brutal winter struggle. He stares at the horizon. The thermometer reads 31 degrees. We'll freeze solid before we get sunk, his mate mutters. Everett smiles faintly. Don't jinx us, son. Then the sonar pings. Contact. A German U-boat stalking them through the ice mist. The alarm sounds. Submarine bearing 085. Within seconds, depth charges roll off the escort ships, detonating with muffled booms beneath the surface. The horizon flashes white with the concussion. The Liberty crews grip their rails, praying the sea itself doesn't crack. For hours, the game continues. Attack, counterattack, silence. The sea swallows both noise and hope. At dawn, a single plume of oil stains the water. Enemy destroyed. Continue course. The men cheer weakly, then return to work. They check boilers, break ice from rigging, nurse frozen hands over steam vents. The fight never truly ends. It only pauses. By the time they reach Murmansk, the convoy has lost 2 ships. The survivors limp into port under gray light hulls glazed with ice. Soviet dockworkers wave from the piers, shouting, "Spasibo, spasibo, thank you." Each tank offloaded will roll to the Eastern Front within days, joining the Red Army's march toward Berlin. Between 1941 and 1945, the Arctic route claims 85 merchant ships and 18 warships. Thousands vanish into the freezing deep. A British admiral once called it the worst journey in the world. But for the Liberty ship men, it's simply another job. Back in America, the yards run hotter than ever. Every loss at sea triggers a telegram, replace immediately. Priority high. Kaiser's workforce answers without hesitation. By late 1944, they've built more than 400 Liberty ships. Shipyards now struggle to find names. The Maritime Commission begins naming them after poets, nurses, even newspaper editors. Every name, however obscure, means one more bridge across the sea. In Baltimore, welders finished the final seams on hull number 2440, the SS Henry L. Stimson. A reporter asks a woman at the torch, "Don't you ever get tired?" She lifts her mask. "Sure, but my brother's on the front. If I stop, he starves." At sea, the ships are holding the world together. In the Pacific, Liberty ships deliver supplies to Guam, Leyte, and Saipan. Many return home with battle scars, patched holes, blackened plates, smoke-streaked funnels. Some never return at all. The SS John Burke vanishes in a ball of flame off Mindoro, her cargo of munitions detonating in a flash seen for miles. Photographs show the explosion, a sphere of white fire consuming ship and sea alike. No one aboard survives. But in the logbooks, her fate is recorded calmly, lost in action. Replacement scheduled. That's what defines the Liberty Fleet indifference to loss. Each ship is precious, but none are irreplaceable. It's the triumph of quantity over perfection, of speed over sophistication. As one engineer puts it, we didn't build ships to last forever. We built them to last long enough. By now, even the German Navy recognizes the futility. Admiral Dönitz admits the tonnage war has failed. Their shipyards outbuild our submarines, he says. One U-boat captain writes, "Every dawn there are more of them." It's as if the sea itself gives birth to these gray monsters. On Christmas Eve 1944, the Horace Greeley begins her return voyage westward. Captain Everett leans against the bridge rail, watching the northern lights shimmer over the frozen sea. "Ugly ducklings," he murmurs. "But they sure can swim," he grins. "Merry Christmas, boys. Let's get this old girl home." They laugh, breath fogging the air, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, The compass points toward dawn and victory. March 1945, Antwerp, Belgium. The port is chaos. Cranes swing day and night. Convoys clog the harbor mouth. The smell of diesel salt and victory fills the air. Above it all, the black silhouettes of Liberty ships dominate the skyline, dozens of them, lined bow to stern decks, piled high with crates and fuel drums. The Allied armies are on the move. The Rhine has been crossed. France is free. The push into Germany has begun. Behind the tanks and trucks thundering east lies an invisible supply chain, one welded together in the shipyards of America. Aboard the SS Thomas Donaldson, Captain Arthur Mackay leans on the bridge rail as cargo winches squeal below. His ship's hull still bears scars from the Murmansk run patches welded over shrapnel holes, scorch marks from a near miss. Now she's delivering her last load of war food blankets and fuel for the troops driving toward the Ruhr. Hard to believe Mackay mutters we were supposed to last 5 years. His first mate smiles. Most didn't even last 5 voyages. Mackay chuckles. Guess we're stubborn. The Thomas Donaldson has earned her stubbornness. She's crossed the Atlantic 13 times under fire, survived storms and submarines, and carried more than 80,000 tons of supplies. On the quayside, soldiers in mud-caked uniforms watch as crates marked Rations Type C roll down the gangways. To them, these ships are lifelines, not legends. They don't see the shipyards or the assembly lines, only the taste of hot food after days on the march. Private Frank Delaney laughs. They called him ugly, he says to a British corporal. But they sure ain't ugly to me. The Brit nods. Ugly ducklings, more like bloody swans now. By spring, the numbers are staggering. More than 2,700 Liberty ships have been built, an industrial army of floating warehouses. They've delivered over 130 million tons of cargo across every ocean. They've carried invasion's lifelines and the world's hopes. They've fed armies, fueled tanks, ferried prisoners, refugees, and wounded men home. Some became troop ships, others floating hospitals. One, the SS Stephen Hopkins, even fought and sank a German raider before going down with all flags flying. Everywhere they've gone, they've carried the same sound. The low, steady beat of their engines, thump, thump, thump. To Allied ears, it's the rhythm of survival. Back in Richmond, Henry Kaiser receives the telegram he's waited 4 years for. From U.S. Maritime Commission to H.J. Kaiser, the Liberty Fleet has fulfilled its mission. The war can now be won faster than it can be fought. He stands on the catwalk of his shipyard looking down at the final hull being assembled, the SS Albert M. Bow, the last Liberty ship ever built. Workers take pictures, some smiling, some quiet. Kaiser removes his hard hat. Gentlemen, he says softly, we built the bridge. The boys walked across it. That's enough. In Europe, the bridge has reached its end. On April 25, 1945, American and Soviet forces meet at the Elbe River. 2 armies supplied by 2 oceans shake hands over the ruin of the Reich. Every road truck and bullet once crossed a Liberty ship's deck. Captain Mackay's vessel, the Thomas Donaldson, never lives to see that moment. On her return from Murmansk, she's torpedoed by U-968. The explosion rips through her stern, sending up a geyser of fire. But she doesn't die easily. The crew fights the blaze for hours. Mackay stays until the last lifeboat leaves. Watching the flames climb the mast, he whispers, "You did your part, girl. You got them there." He steps into the lifeboat as the Donaldson slips beneath the black Arctic water. The last thing he hears is steam hissing from her boilers, the death sigh of a ship that fed an army. In May, Germany surrenders. The guns fall silent. The Liberty Fleet, too, begins to rest. Many ships are scrapped. Others become peacetime freighters hauling grain and coal instead of guns. Some are left anchored in quiet harbors, monuments of steel, to a war won by endurance, not glamour. In a letter to Roosevelt's successor, an admiral writes, "The Liberty ship is the weapon no one celebrates, but everyone owed their life to." That summer in New York Harbor, a banner hangs above Pier 84. It reads, "Welcome home, Liberties." Dock hands cheer as the battered gray ships glide in one last time. On their decks, sailors look out at the skyline and think of those who didn't make it home. For a moment, the harbor seems to shimmer with ghosts, thousands of them men and women, who built and sailed the fleet that fed the free world. And somewhere far away, a ship's bell rings slow, solemn, and final. The sound carries across the waves like a heartbeat fading into memory. September 1945, San Francisco Bay. The fog hangs low over the water, muffling the clang of shipyard cranes that have fallen silent for the first time in 4 years. The war is over. Victory parades sweep through the streets, confetti floats down from office windows, and sailors dance in Union Square. But down at the waterfront, the Liberty ships rest quietly moored in endless rows, gray hulls stretching into the mist like ghosts of an army at rest. Aboard the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, Chief Engineer Thomas Leary leans against the rail. "Feels strange, don't it?" he says to his mate. 4 years of never stopping, and now nothing. His mate nods. "I keep listening for the engine. I can still hear it in my head at night." The O'Brien has survived 4 Atlantic crossings, 1 run to Normandy, and countless storms. Now she sits idle, her boilers cold. Around her, hundreds of other Liberties float at anchor: the John W. Brown, the Robert E. Peary, the William Clark, once fire and steel, now ghosts. The Maritime Commission faces a new problem: what to do with the fleet that saved the world. Some ships are sold to private firms, converted for peacetime trade. Others are mothballed in vast reserve fleets, sealed and painted against rust. Kaiser's shipyards, once roaring with sparks, are quiet now. The men and women who built a ship a day scatter back to their old lives. On the walls of the Richmond cafeteria, a faded banner still hangs: "We built the Bridge of Victory." A new worker asks, "What bridge?" An old foreman smiles. "You're standing on it, son." But even in peace, the Liberty ships are not finished. When famine grips Europe in 1946, they are called again not to carry bullets, but bread. Holds once filled with ammunition now overflow with sacks of flour. Deck cranes lift crates of milk powder instead of shells. In Marseille, children wave as Liberty ships painted white with red crosses arrive. One, the SS Henry Marcus, is called the Angel Ship. Captain William Langford writes in his log, "This time the cargo won't kill anyone. This time it saves them." By 1947, hundreds of Liberties join the Food for Peace program, delivering supplies for the Marshall Plan, a new kind of victory. Meanwhile, others quietly disappear. The sea claims some, scrapyards claim more. The fleet begins to dwindle, but their legacy endures. Naval engineers study their design, the foundation of modern shipbuilding. Every container ship carries a trace of Liberty DNA. Even the concept of logistical warfare, that wars are won by supply chains, becomes doctrine in every military academy. In 1948, Captain Arthur Mackay visits a ship graveyard in New Jersey. Dozens of Liberty hulls sit half-submerged in mud and gulls. He takes off his cap. "You fed the world," he says softly. "Not bad for a bunch of ugly ducklings." He runs his hand along a faded hull number, feeling the rough weld seams, the marks of urgency, not elegance. He laughs. "Hell, I remember the Navy said these things wouldn't last 5 years. His companion grins. "Looks like they were wrong." And they were. Some of those temporary ships sail for 30 more years. Others serve in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. A handful are saved as museum ships: the Jeremiah O'Brien, the John W. Brown, restored by volunteers who refuse to let their story die. When the O'Brien fires her boilers again decades later, old men weep as her engine thumps once more, the sound of a past that won't fade. Historians will call the Liberty ship the ship that won the war. But the men and women who built and sailed them already knew that. They didn't need medals or monuments. Their reward was the knowledge that when the world needed a miracle, they built one out of steel and sweat. Henry Kaiser told Congress in 1946, "The Liberty ship was not beautiful, but she was honest. She proved freedom is an act of work." The sun sets over the quiet bay. The last Liberty ship sways gently on the tide, her decks silent, her paint faded. But if you listen closely, the echo of engines still hums beneath the waves, a faint heartbeat that once fed an army and saved the free world. May 1970, Portland, Maine. The crowd gathers beneath a pale spring sky, flags fluttering in the Atlantic breeze. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders, cameras flash, and a band plays Anchors Aweigh. Before them, moored to the pier, sits a ship that once fed the world, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, freshly restored. She is old now, but proud. Her rivetless hull still bears the lines of that revolutionary wartime design. Visitors trace their hands along her warm steel sides, reading plaques that tell of convoys, invasions, and frozen seas. Inside her engine room, the triple expansion steam engine churns rhythmically, thump, hiss, clank. An elderly man in a faded navy cap stands at the railing, tears in his eyes. "She sounds just like she used to," he whispers. That man is Thomas Leary, her old chief engineer. "We built her to last a year," he says. "She's lasted a lifetime." The Liberty ship has become legend, her glory quieter, born of endurance numbers and the simple power of enough. More than 700 built, over 200,000 merchant mariners, billions of tons of supplies delivered across every ocean. They turned logistics, the dull, grinding backbone of war, into a weapon sharper than any sword. In 1979, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy dedicates a memorial to those lost at sea. They sustained the fighters, they fed the starving, they kept the sea lanes open. Without them, freedom would have perished. Among the guests is Arthur Mackay, the captain, who once watched the Thomas Donaldson sink beneath the Arctic ice. He lays a wreath and murmurs, "You can win a war with bullets, but you only survive it with bread." He salutes not to a flag, but to the invisible fleet still moving across the horizon in his memory. The Liberty ship's influence endures. Every modern cargo ship owes something to Henry Kaiser's innovation. His modular construction proved that speed and simplicity could outmatch perfection, a lesson that reshaped industry itself. In Korea, dozens of Liberty ships are reactivated. In Vietnam, they carry supplies once again. Some still serve into the 21st century. On May 30th, 1994, the Jeremiah O'Brien sails again to Normandy for the 50th anniversary of D-Day. Crowds line the French coast. Veterans salute through tears. "You can almost hear them," says her captain, Richard Pimental. The ship's horn sounds long and low, a salute across time to every Liberty ship that never made it home. Today, only a handful remain: the Jeremiah O'Brien in San Francisco, the John W. Brown in Baltimore, the Arthur M. Huddell in Greece. The rest have vanished, their steel reborn in skyscrapers and bridges, their spirit welded into modern civilization. Every shipyard that builds on an assembly line carries their legacy, proof that ordinary people can perform miracles together. In museums, children climb the Liberty's decks, their laughter echoing where once there was fear and fire. Guides tell them how welders worked through the night, how convoys braved torpedoes, how these ships fed an army and freed a world. Most children can't imagine what it meant to build 700 ships in 4 years, but they touch the steel and they understand. As the sun sets over San Francisco Bay, the Jeremiah O'Brien lies at anchor once more, lights glowing against the dark water. Down in her engine room, a single valve hisses. The pistons move slow but steady, thump, hiss, thump, like a living heartbeat. A whisper seems to echo through the steel. "We weren't pretty. We weren't fast. But we got them there." And that, more than anything, is how the ugly duckling became the swan that carried a world to freedom.